Well, hi everybody. Thank you once again for this great event. I'm thanking Zach and Jeff, Rich, and the entire MVJ crew. Welcome. So this is our information session for veterans for the Newmark J-School. My name is Max Patino. I'm the Director of Admissions at the program, and I'm going to share our screen in time to allow everybody here in the room to introduce themselves, and we'll engage in an informal conversation about our program and the different masters and different individuals here. And we also have a great guest today and talk about his experience during the program. Once again, I'm joined by Jeanette Tavares, who's also working behind the scenes and recording this event. And I'll allow and pass it on to Zach to introduce himself and everybody else here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you and everybody from the Newmark School for putting this on and educating our veterans about the great opportunities at your school. And I hope we get to chat more during this call about the importance of J-School and how it can help further veterans in journalism. So I'm Zack Baddorf. I'm the Executive Director of Military Veterans in Journalism, and joined as well by Rich Dolan, who is also on our volunteer team at Military Veterans in Journalism.
We also have here today Joe. Joe, I don't want to slaughter your last name.
Honestly, I love it when people butcher it. It makes me feel
I was going to go with Amditis.
That's close. It's Amditis. Yep.
Okay. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Joe Amditis. Right now, I'm Associate Director of the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. We're a local news and community reporting support organization that we try to strengthen local news in the Garden State and beyond. We're also we also study, practice, promote, and sort of support collaborative journalism across the United States. It's a big part of what we do. I'm also a graduate in 2016, class of 2016 of the Social J program at CUNY. Fantastic experience, and I'm eager to tell you all about. And yeah, I'm just really excited. I'm always supportive of everything that Jeff and Carrie do and the folks at CUNY. So I'm happy to be here.
No, I'm going to give you the mic a little bit before we proceed. I just want to introduce Professor Jeff Jarvis and Director of the Social J program, Carrie Brown, joining us. They were sort of the brainchild of this great event, and we're looking forward also to also showing the comparisons of the traditional programs, Social J, and how all of these can be different opportunities for potential veterans exploring journalism as a career. So we're going to go, and Joe, if you can speak a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the programs. But I want to give the mic to Joe and talk a little bit about your experience with the Newmark J-School.
Sure. Yeah, to be totally honest, I was not planning on going to journalism grad school. In fact, I was convinced by a colleague of mine named Simon Galperin on the rooftop of a New York City building, let's just say at one point. We were looking over the city and deciding whether or not I wanted to go to grad school and pursue a PhD in communications in Colorado or something, or, stick with journalism, especially local journalism. And I initially was, to be honest, was a little thrown by the name social journalism, as I think a lot of people have been, especially at the time in 2016. The word social had different implications than I think what I had in mind. And when I found out that the approach was social in the sense of community building, that's really what drew me to it, because there is and has been so much wrong with, in my opinion, just the way that journalism is talked about, is thought about, is practiced, the philosophy behind it. It's inherently extractive in many cases. It's sort of a one-way conversation, if you will. If you can even have a one-way conversation, you're really doing journalism at people in many cases. And it didn't feel like that for what, first of all, from what I knew about Jeff and his work and my relationship with him through the center, and, meeting Carrie and meeting the rest of the faculty, and really just hearing the approach, the difference in approach, the philosophy that underpins the CUNY, grad school approach to journalism was really what turned me on to it. So I met with Jeff. I talked to him about it. What's this going to be? It was a one-year master's program at the time, so that was also a little attractive to me because I was going to be working full-time while I did it. And I also live in New Jersey, and I lived in Linden, New Jersey at the time. So this was a was a train ride, but it wasn't exactly, you know, like a Jersey City train ride, for instance. So I had to think a lot about, you know, what my options were, what I would benefit from, what I would gain from doing the program. You know, after consideration, it just was clear that, you know, this was the program for me. This was combining all of the elements of you know, forward-thinking journalism and reimagining the field in a new way, and in reimagining the relationship. I guess maybe not reimagining, but refocusing the relationship on the aspects of community that it should be. And so, yeah, we kicked off in 2016, which happened to be a relatively uneventful year for journalism. So, yeah, it was a pretty standard fare. But no, I mean, we got involved with one of the largest, if not still the largest, nationwide collaborative journalism projects in the country, Election Land, which tracked all kinds of issues at the polls and voter issues across the country for the 2016 election. But we also got down in the weeds and did things, you know, with ProPublica, with really high profile, in the sense that they're doing really substantive work, these high profile organizations that the faculty already had relationships with, either they worked there or they knew people there. And it was just a barrage of quality and substance underpinned by a really interesting philosophy and a really interesting take on the way that journalism needs to change in order to adapt and survive, if at all. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. I can restate that a million different ways. But that's basically my sense of it. And I came away with it not just with a new sense of journalism, but with a community myself, a community of Social J alum, a community of like-minded people and differently minded people for sure, but all of whom sort of were united by a common sense of purpose, of mission, and an understanding that things need to continue to move forward and things need to change if they are to continue. And you know, change with an orientation towards community, towards shifting the balance of power, towards equipping and activating people of these communities to build and make their own news, their own journalism, to create the local news and information infrastructure and ecosystem that communities need in order to survive. And I'm not talking about, you know, I'm talking about bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, the bottom of the city bureau hierarchy of news kind of stuff, all the way up to this sort of, you know, affirmation and, you know, high-minded stuff with, you know, maintaining identity and everything, which has its place. But really at its core, public service, journalism as a public service is really what I think undergirds the force of the program. And that's what drew me to it.
Thank you, Joe. I have one question, and this is something that I guess maybe, and anyone else is interested, you feel free to write our questions in the chat room if you're in attendance. For those who are listening through our recording, we'll send our contact information later on and we can follow up with you. But Joe, did you come in with journalism experience beforehand? And also, what skill set did you feel that you brought to the table that made you, I guess, you found successes in the field of journalism before you step foot into the campus?
Well, to say that I had journalism experience would be misleading, I guess. I had started a local news site for New Brunswick, New Jersey, and the Rutgers community there. We called it Muckgers, which I will never live down that name. I did not come up with it. It is very hard to say, and but it's supposed to be a portmanteau of muckraking Rutgers. A couple of colleagues and fellow students at Rutgers of mine, we kicked off this newspaper, which you know, ended up being relatively successful for the fact that none of us were paid. We got a small $4,000 micro grant from the Center for Cooperative Media, which was at the time called the New Jersey News Commons. I started working with them, going to all the trainings, the business coaching, and really starting to learn the ins and outs of how to manage a publication, albeit a incredibly small one. But I really came to journalism and storytelling through political science research and research in international relations, actually. I was doing conflict studies with the political science department at Rutgers, and I double majored in criminal justice and political science. And I was finding all of these amazing stories in research in the research papers that I was reading, which we all, you know, peruse at our leisure, as we all know, you know, a stack of research papers on the coffee table, a standard fare in any American home. But what I was finding is that, you know, these are incredible stories and they're not being told in a more, you know, public way or to a more widespread audience. And not only that, but these stories of resistance, of rebellion, of perseverance, they're all buried in these dense pages. And so part of it was to try to bring these incredible stories into a different medium and a more digestible way, which is what led me to, I guess, storytelling and media in that way. But I was never formally trained in journalism, which is why I felt this extreme sense of imposter syndrome to go get a master's degree in journalism and be like, yeah, I'm a master of journalism now after a year. So I was scared, and I just like, my tendency when I'm nervous is A, to talk a lot, and B, to just read as much as I can about something so that I can pretend to know what I'm talking about for long enough to get to the point where people stop looking at me, right? And so I did. I read Jeff's book, I think twice. I read everything I could get my hands on. It was the future of news. It was this. I was trying to like wrap my head around, catch up with what I felt was a deficiency on my part, a lack of understanding or lack of experience. Not only as someone who was older than my class, my college, graduating class by 2 years because I was deployed, and I started late, but also someone who was not, trained in journalism. And so I was sort of expecting actually to hit the ground at CUNY in this master's program and feel woefully left behind among all these, honed, trained journalism students or journalism practitioners in this master's program. And instead, what I found was, while a very rigorous program, I found a wide variety of experience levels among the students, and a willingness to accommodate those among the staff and the faculty in a way that allowed me to learn new things and progress with the class, the rest of the class, but also really, pick up on the core elements of what journalism is and why journalism is the way it is, without being so tied to the institutional, legacy of these long-standing, traditions and norms in the field.
Thank you, Joe. I have a question from Richard on the chat room. Welcome, Richard. Richard is representing John Jay College with 525 plus veterans, almost 99% who served in enlisted roles in current era operations. Richard would like to hear from Joe and others to discuss why should veterans consider careers in journalism?
Yeah, I mean, you're already used to making barely any money, so why not keep that going? That's what drew me into it. No, I mean, I often find this question confusing myself because, why should anybody consider a career in journalism? I mean, especially now, it's not exactly the most glamorous position. And you're certainly not going to get the thank you for your service nonsense that you get when, in the military. So you're going to get probably the opposite of that. But I mean, anybody who's interested in understanding how we communicate with each other, how we tell stories about our society, about our communities, and about our history, and who tells those stories, it's important to understand journalism. And, there's no better way to make sure that these stories are told in the correct way than to do it yourself and to do it with others and to do it in collaboration with community. Because, everybody is a subject matter expert on something, and most of those people have lived experiences that, you just don't have, you can't have, you never could. And so to expose yourself to that, to engross yourself in it and to study it and practice it is, one of the best ways I can think of to really get a grasp on how one of the major aspects of our society functions. And not only that, but to learn how to improve it and to do it better. And so I would say that same thing to anybody. I don't think veterans are special in that way. I don't at all, actually. I mean, fellow agent of imperialism and global capital at your service in many ways. You tell me what makes journalism specifically relevant to veterans. I would say we are directly impacted by the most consequential aspects of U.S. policy and the conversations around that. Specifically those of us who were deployed overseas to fight in wars, illegal wars that, against countries that never attacked us. That's very important to understand how we got to that point and what role the journalism played in getting us into those wars, or at least supporting them blindly, without questioning the administration. And, luckily that's never going to happen again because we've all learned our lessons from the Iraq War, and we're not going to blindly cheer on aggressive military actions, you would hope. But I also think from a democratic perspective, one of the main reasons, if you look back at the Vietnam War, one of the main reasons there was such strong opposition to it was the literal representation that the draft, brought on. You're compelled to be a part of something you have a say and a stake in what happens, and you're more likely to speak up when something goes wrong. And so while I'm not suggesting that everyone be drafted into the Social J program, I would entertain it, I guess, maybe. But we'll do like a voluntary service, maybe a good signing or enlistment bonus or something might help. But yeah, it's just, you got to be part of it. And if you want to have a say in it, if you want to change it, if you want to make an impact in it, one of the most direct ways to do that is to just start making moves towards making it.
Thanks, Joe. Zack, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. That was really informative. Thank you for sharing your perspective there, Joe. So with military veterans and journalism, we come at it from a perspective of wanting to increase diversity and inclusion in newsrooms. And so veterans are vastly underrepresented. If you look at the American population, roughly 8% of Americans have served in the armed forces, but only in newsrooms, it's somewhere around 2% of media workers who are veterans. So we think that really needs to change. And we think those voices like Joe, my own, Rich, other folks on the call who work in journalism are critical. The veterans are not a monolithic group. They encompass a wide variety of perspectives. And I think oftentimes when they are looking at things like wars, like foreign policy, like national security, they're going to come at it from a very critical perspective, similar to the things that Joe just said. I myself am very critical of American foreign policy and have done a lot of reporting in my journalism experience on those failures of American foreign policy. And so not only do veterans bring that unique perspective, they also bring nuanced understanding of the culture within military, within the veteran community, and they bring a lot of experiences that you don't necessarily have from journalists who have not served in the military. Of course, you don't need to have served in the military to report on veterans or military or foreign policy, but it certainly helps. It adds a great experience and understanding of what's going on. And that's why we think it's critical that more veterans get involved in journalism. And that's what we're trying to do as an organization, Military Veterans Journalism.
I would just absolutely echo what Zack just said, especially when it comes to representation. It's not something that I check off on the application forms when I'm applying for any kind of job or anything like that. But it absolutely is an issue of underrepresentation in a different way, in a different but similar way to the other vast and gaping holes in the diversity and representation of newsrooms across the United States, let alone the executive suite of newsrooms and the ownership and the decision-making rooms. I can never use the phrase "the room where it happened" again, but essentially it is very true. And if there's one thing that I think would improve that is to have people who have, like Zack said, the lived experience of the direct implication of those wars, of life and death decisions. And when you have people who have experienced that, and it doesn't always go one way either. I mean, you have, warmongers who have been to war, come back a warmonger. And we've seen that across the board. But at the very least, it would be nice to have someone at least voicing their opinion in the rooms where the decisions are made, in having those opinions or those perspectives based on lived experience and, grappling with those consequences, and not simply, armchair quarterbacking or presuming to know what is in the best interest of those who are going to be sent, or the poor Black and brown kids who are going to be sent over there to fight these wars and kill other poor Black and brown kids. Yeah.
Just one other point to add on that is that, we see that after 18, 19 years of war, millions, billions, if not trillions of dollars spent on these wars, thousands of American soldiers and troops, lives lost and injured and maimed, yet we're still not hearing a vast quality representation of these voices in the news media. And so that's why I think what we do in military veterans is important. And that's why I really appreciate what the Newmark School of Journalism is doing as well, is working to provide a pipeline, provide more diverse voices within journalism. And so that's why I'm really grateful for what all of you are doing.
Thanks, Zack. Jeff, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just briefly. My fellow professor Wayne Swoboda was here briefly, but disappeared. But he has been pushing for a long time to have veterans in the school. It's for the good of veterans and the good of journalism, but it's also for the good of the school, is to bring that perspective and so I've been dying to figure out how to do this for years, and then along comes Zack, who happenstance has a whole organization devoted to this. So my hope is this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship where we can try to entice people from the ranks of veterans into the school and into journalism, and bring the kind of perspective. And I think importantly, Joe, the other question I have for both you and Zack is not just the lived experience, the perspective, but also the skills that in our school, in both programs, which we'll describe shortly, we have a median age, I think, of 27. Is that about right? Okay. And so we have a lot of people who come from different careers. And as a result, they bring experience, skills, lived experience, perspective from those careers. And I think to have the military career as one of those in that mix is critical. So I'm just curious for a second of, I can say that in general terms, but are there any specific skills that you learn in the military that you think are applicable to journalism and journalism school?
Somebody's got to clean the bathrooms. So it's, yeah, that is the majority of what you end up doing in the military. They don't tell you, they really don't tell you in the recruiting video and with the obstacle courses, how much waiting and cleaning is involved. No, I honestly, to be completely honest and joking at the same time, the waiting and the patience is actually a very important skill. The ability to understand the slow turn of bureaucracy and how to navigate that has honestly come in handy for me more than most of the other things I can think of. But on top of that, situational awareness is something you hear a lot in the military. The ability to, or I guess the ability and the tendency to always be evaluating and looking and observing and trying to interpret what you're seeing, and not just sort of casually letting the world pass you by. And that can result in a lot of neuroses. Every piece of trash on the side of the road can be a point of interest, let's just say. But it can also lead to a very heightened sense of motive, of interest, of placement, of understanding what's going on around you in a way that is maybe not intuitive to a lot of people, or maybe most people aren't sort of trained or brought up to think like. Somebody else, I think, Rich, did you want to add to anything to this? I see Zack was trying to get you to participate. I don't know if you're a co-host. I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute there.
Yeah. So, my name is Rich Dolan. I'm the outreach manager at MVJ. I have a 2-week-old daughter, so I'm mostly on mute because she is frustrated that she can't eat every second of every day. But yeah, so anyway, I was an infantry officer in the Army, and what I think veterans bring to the table, I mean, I could speak from the point of infantry, and I work with some logisticians while in that capacity as well. I think, across the board, like, human beings are human beings. There's going to be some veterans who suck, and there's going to be some veterans who are great and like show all the great qualities that you should take out of military service. But there's also people who leave without it, just like any other walk of life. But I think the people who really embrace service and what it has to offer come out with really great entry-level skills into journalism. Because oftentimes, like, I just got my master's in journalism in May. I finished up, and what I saw a lot with my peers who were like mid to late 20s was like they couldn't meet a deadline, which to me was like insane, because an 18-year-old in one of my privates in my platoon could meet a deadline, and it was kind of scary seeing what was going out there. And obviously there's a lot of greatness that goes out there too, but to make a long story short, what I'm trying to say is that you get that indoctrinated into you from day one in the military. So when you leave, you already, if you did it the right way, you should have a leg up in terms of that entry level position in the newsroom where, you work, you work on a desk you don't want to, and you also have to clean the bathrooms. You're already used to that. And you're used to meeting all the deadlines and exceeding the standard, because that's built in you. You want to exceed that standard. You want to do better. Maybe that means that you volunteer to do some other beats that you don't normally cover, etc. So I think, the drive and the reliability and effectiveness is definitely some really great, strong skills. And then, you play catch up as a veteran, like most other careers. You're going to be at that entry level first few years, and then you'll skyrocket after 4 or 5 years, once you learn the fundamental skills of that new field. But I think there's a ton of transferable skills, and people sell themselves short way too often coming out of service. What does infantry have to do with journalism? I mean, I could list off a bunch of things, but at face value, you might be like, well, I trained to shoot and fight. What does that have to do with writing articles? There's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah. I would just echo what Rich said. I'm a fellow infantry as well. And yeah, he's absolutely right. And yes, I do sell myself short often. But I think one of the important points he said was the willingness and the understanding that you will be uncomfortable for certain periods of time in your life. And that is not a state of, you shouldn't enter a state of panic when that happens. And you should actually, you can learn to lean into that. The phrase that the military, people in the military, at least when I was in, used was embrace the suck. And that can apply to various situations. It doesn't have to just be, sand and flies as representing the suck. It can also be, the struggles of learning a new skill or entering a new field or being in a new city or state, and having to grapple with being behind and, having to learn things that you weren't trained in, but now are being relied on to be proficient in. And that learning curve can be devastating for some people. And the inability to take a step back and, outside of yourself, and understand that your emotional reactions to a particular situation aren't necessarily the only reaction that you can have, or there may be ways to manage that. And, therapy is the best way to get to that point, obviously, and everyone should do that. But the military also sort of forces you to come to that, to get to that place in many ways, for better or for worse. And that skill in itself, while not exactly directly tangible, is incredibly important in situations, especially new ones, that you may not understand it at first. But Jeff, you were going to say something before I cut you off.
Well, I transition into kind of what the school offers, but I think that's an important one, because the other word that I would put to you is resilience. And now more than ever, resilience is needed. I was talking to somebody who was admitted to the school, who we're enthusiastic to have, who was debating, do I come now or do I wait a year, given COVID and all that? And my response to her was, you're going to kick yourself if you come in a year versus now. This is the stories going on now between COVID and the racial reformation of America. These are hard times, but this is the time when journalists do this. And so I think to be able to come in now is incredibly exciting. And what I tell students as well is, it is time to take over journalism from the old white men like me who screwed it up, and learn what we teach and question everything, and then rebuild journalism probably from the ashes. It's an extremely exciting time to rethink things and to challenge everything. And so we're a school that does that. If I should mention, so Carrie and I, and I'll hand over to Carrie in just a minute, work in social journalism, but we have a couple programs at the school, just to be clear that we care what's best for you. So there's a master's in journalism, which is a little more, traditional is the wrong word because we're not traditional in any way, but what you would expect from a journalism degree in terms of learning the skills of reporting and writing, and taking on a subject concentration. And Max will tell you more about that in a few minutes. And within that, we have a bilingual program, the nation's only master's in Spanish and English journalism, for those who are interested in that. And then Carrie and I started, or I had the idea for, and then Carrie corrected all my mistakes and did it right, directing the program in social journalism, which Joe was in, and so he's received the full hypnosis for that. But what we believe fundamentally in social journalism is that journalism is a service to communities. And the great thing about veterans is you come from communities. You understand the bonds of communities well and understand what communities need, and that is the essence of social journalism. And so we believe that journalism is about not just making a product called content, but about understanding how to listen to communities, observe them, understand and empathize with their needs, reflect their needs to make sure you have it back right, and then use all the many new tools we have available to us to serve those needs. So that's our philosophy of social journalism, and also that's what I do, is just blather about philosophy. Carrie does the real work and the real understanding, and brings in great faculty and the students. So I'll hand over to you, Carrie, to describe the details of how we do Social J, and then Max will describe the MAJ, as we call it, the Masters in Journalism, and then we get to questions, right?
Sounds good, Jeff.
Sure, yeah. Jeff and Joe did a pretty good job of describing what social journalism is all about. But essentially, we just really believed that journalism as it was traditionally practiced could be better, at having real impact on people's lives and listening to some of the perspectives that are often missing. And I would definitely include, veterans' perspectives as not completely missing, but one that we could definitely, see a lot more of in our news, and also making, news more actionable and relevant to people. Some of that involves, ceding some of our power as gatekeepers and really trying to make news a little bit more participatory, getting communities more involved in the process of creating the news, setting the news agenda, and also even thinking creatively about how we deliver news. Stories are outstanding and wonderful, whether they're in text or video or audio form, and we teach all of that. But, sometimes for some communities, that really just doesn't fit in with their lives. They don't want to read a 5,000 word story, but they might be really interested in getting text messages with very targeted reported information that might affect, for example, their rent or their taxes or something like that. Or maybe something really creative like journalism as theater or music or poetry. There's all kinds of opportunities to think differently about how we distribute information to communities, as well as how we maybe get it out in a less extractive way. So yeah, that's kind of what social journalism is all about. I think it was a good question before as to why veterans, or really why anyone would choose journalism right now. Obviously it's not a wonderful time in terms of, our economy and jobs, although, at this point I have friends that work in the medical field that are also struggling. So I don't know that there's any guarantee no matter what field you're in, but I do fundamentally, see that, these are very broadly transferable skills in terms of being able to really communicate with others and understand other people with empathy. And I think you can potentially use that skill set in many, many different kinds of fields. And also, our grads, slowly, news organizations are realizing more and more than they did even just 5 years ago when we first started this program, that these skill sets are really important. We can't rely on advertisers or just clicks anymore for our business model. We're really much more reliant on things like subscribers and membership. And that means, building trust. People aren't going to give you, their money or their time unless you've really found out a way to serve them and meet their needs. So, we have graduates working at, Sports Illustrated, Money Magazine, ProPublica, all kinds of different, news organizations, and many of them are in roles in which, they are working on engagement and, building relationships with communities in new ways. So all is not completely lost in terms of the job front, although I would never say that it's an easy time by any means in that way. And I would also just say that we also really believe that your perspective matters in social journalism. We really question the way objectivity is maybe traditionally practiced. That doesn't mean that we don't verify information or that we don't care about truth, but that, we recognize that every single human being has subjectivity that they bring to the table, and some of those perspectives get lost. So I think that's why we are always looking for diversity in all of its forms in journalism. And of course, we traditionally think about things like race and gender, but it can also extend to, people that have had different experiences in the military or spending time overseas or, training. All of those are experiences that can, you know, inform the way you might report or tell a story. And, you know, we think that's not something you just have to, or even that you could just sort of turn off when you walk in the door of a newsroom, but rather that it's something that could be really valuable or important to you. So that's sort of the basics. You know, we have, I mean, all of the more nitty gritty kind of information about the courses and the curriculum, you can find on our webpage or Medium. And, you know, we're always happy to answer questions about, you know, that kind of stuff. But the philosophy is really where we differ in the most fundamental ways from other journalism programs out there, although we do teach all of the classic journalism skills as well. You know, it is a journalism school. We are so different from everything else that it's like utterly, you know, out in left field or something else like that. So yeah, that's kind of the basic rundown, and happy to answer any questions or anything.
Thank you, Carrie.
I would just add one thing really quick to what Carrie said, because it's so important. I don't even like the idea of a career in journalism, because it puts the journalism first. I think you should consider a career in service, a career in community. And it seems like many veterans have already done that at a certain point. And journalism, if storytelling and journalism and you know, information service is something that you are good at, or you'd like to be better at, or you'd like to understand how it integrates into the rest of you know, society and community, and how you can leverage that to do the best work that you can and the best service that you can, then yes, a career in journalism is right. But at its core, that's just like saying, you know, why should you produce content? It's like, because who fucking cares? Like, just because you wanna, it doesn't matter. But if you're asking, why should I care, or why should I consider a career in this type of journalism? It's because it's rooted in service and it's rooted in community. And if you're not interested in that, then like, okay, you can give the tuition money to CUNY, they'll take it. But you know, it's really a matter of where you're coming from at the beginning. It is not about journalism. Journalism is a catch-all, in the same way that a story is a catch-all for the type of delivery of information that we tend to lean towards. And that, I think, is really important. And I can't speak for the MAJ, but I can speak for the Social J program, that is really what drives the push towards a career in journalism from that angle. So thank you, Carrie.
Very quickly, if you don't mind, I totally agree. I mean, I think we see veterans across the nation looking for other ways to serve. You have organizations like Team Rubicon that get people involved with national disaster recovery. I think when veterans get out of the military, sometimes they're looking for that other way for them to continue their service. And so for me, when I got out of the military back in 2006, I knew that I wanted to do journalism, and I discovered over time that it really was a way to serve various communities. And I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do in journalism. So I think finding that jumping into journalism again is another way for veterans to continue their service.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody. I mean, that's great points of interest. I want to give Zach, Zach, I know we discussed towards the end, but since you have the mic, why don't you give a little bit more background for MVJ for everybody who's looking at us right now, watching us.
Yeah, so we started the organization, I and a fellow veteran, just last year. So we are very new. But it came really out of our own personal experiences and wanting to find ways to contribute and serve our fellow veterans in media and bring more into the fold. So when I was in the Navy, 2001 to 2006, I was a Navy journalist. And so I did stories about the military, for the military. And I had an amazing experience. Got to go around the Middle East and Asia and a little bit of the Pacific. And when I got out, I thought it would be a super easy transition. You know, I had these hard skills. I had earned my bachelor's while I was serving in the military in journalism, and I had a decent enough portfolio. But as it turns out, it was very difficult. I suffered a lot of challenges, and I applied for dozens of jobs throughout the country, and I failed. It was tough. I wasn't doing the right things. I wasn't networking. I thought my resume would be enough on its own. And so bit by bit, I grew my journalism career over the years and have more recently reported for the New York Times and AP and Guardian and all sorts of places, mostly focusing on foreign policy, lived in Central African Republic and other places, reporting and doing a lot of stuff, again, that I'm super proud of. So in addition to that, over the years, I've also mentored informally some veterans who are interested in the field. And my co-founder, former Marine, had also been doing the same thing. So we thought maybe there was something we could do to sort of institutionalize and take these lessons learned. And so that's what we did. We formed Military Veterans in Journalism. And we've developed basically 4 lines of effort that we're working on, all volunteer, but we're basically, the first thing is mentorship, which is we are connecting veterans with seasoned journalists and giving them some resources and time to develop skills and make their way into industry that way. Secondly, we are working on various events. Unfortunately, COVID has stymied us a little bit, but we're partnering with organizations like National Association of Broadcasters, Disabled American Veterans, University of Mississippi, Medill School of Journalism. Of course, we have the Newmark J-School, and we're looking for ways to provide opportunities, again, more networking in person, career fairs. We're doing a virtual career fair in early July, and finding ways to connect and create, again, career opportunities for veterans looking to get into media. A third line of effort for us is internships and fellowships, and we're working with NPR, for example, which has a virtual internship that we're doing. Veterans can apply for that right now. That's ongoing, and that will start in the fall. And we are super excited to have other opportunities in the future, hopefully with the Newmark School, still under development. And we finally are working on advocacy to talk to J-schools, to talk to nonprofit organizations working in the veteran and in the media space. We're talking to media outlets at both the national and the local level, talking to them about the values and the skills, the nuanced understanding and the experiences that veterans bring to the table when they come and join newsrooms. And there's been a lot of talk today in this call about trust. Really, I think if we look at the trust for the media, which is really low right now, and we look alternatively at the trust for the military is very high. So we think that bringing, not only it's beneficial for a number of reasons, but even just the trust alone that military veterans bring to the table is one thing that veterans bring when they join newsrooms. They bring that objectivity and that neutrality, of course, with their own experiences, own perspective and experience tied in there. But there are a lot of things that ultimately we think veterans bring that will benefit the newsrooms, benefit ultimately newsroom consumers, rather news consumers. So that's what we're fighting for. Our big goal is to get more veterans into journalism.
Thank you for that, Zach. And thank you, everybody. I mean, this is really what we were looking for, just a conversation and just, providing you information across the board. I'm going to talk briefly right now. I know, Jeff, you may have to leave earlier, but we will share information on the chat room with any ways to contact any of us. If anybody interested in the MVJ program, Zach will provide us also with any contact information or process that they would like to go. So just real quick about the traditional MA, not that we're not that we're least, but we are the program that really started, and all in all, just Newmark as a whole. Keep in mind that we were established in the digital age. So we opened doors in 2006, which brought us really to a conversation that we've always been not only the new kid on the block, but always the one that has been more progressive. We've always, in my opinion, had the most digitally savvy faculty across the board. I've come from 14 years at Syracuse University, it's a private institution at the Newhouse School. And I saw a lot of things that were different. And one of the things that really drew me to working in this program is the fact that it's always willing to change and to embrace change and to accept ideas like this, partnerships and collaborations. We are a program that focuses on concentrations that takes a year and a half. We will discuss a little bit briefly the programs, but there are three, as mentioned before: the traditional MA program, MA in journalism and Spanish language, and Social J, which we discussed earlier. The traditional MA is completed in 16 months. It's a 3-semester program with a required mandatory summer internship, and we discussed different things throughout the process. But keep in mind, it's one of these programs where you're treated as a reporter, as a journalist from the moment you step foot into campus. It's really a relationship that mirrors more of an editor, reporter rather than a faculty professor. It's not unusual for students even to get work published from the moment that they step foot into campus. So it's really more of a newsroom environment, if you will, as you discussed, the masters. The program itself, you come in, but you have to choose one of the concentrations by the time you get to the beginning of the second semester. This could be either arts and culture reporting, business and economics reporting, health and science reporting, international or urban reporting. Spanish language is also the 6th subject concentration. I left it last just because Spanish language, you will require to have certain requirements, an additional interview and an additional writing samples that you have to submit at the beginning of the application process. But aside of that, all the other subject concentrations, you don't have to pick them at the initial start. You select those after you start your second semester. We also have media specialties that you can use in any of the subject concentrations, and this could be a focus on audio journalism, interactive journalism, investigative, or visual. And under visual, we have broadcast, documentary, and photojournalism. We are one of the few schools that initiated the idea that our interns need to be paid. And that's something that has seemed a lot more frequent now in the industry. But in 2006, when we first opened doors, it was highly unusual. We were one of the first schools to guarantee a paid internship for our students. So we have a career services that's main existence is to help you identify those internship opportunities and eventually job opportunities. And we have relationships with Vice, New York Times, CNN, BuzzFeed. But the good thing about it is the way the guarantee works is, let's say you also come in and you have a relationship with a small paper in Vermont that will give you a lot of writing opportunities, but unfortunately they can't pay you. If you come and show us, and then we'll vet the organization to make sure that you are doing journalism work, we'll pay you up to $4,000 to go work for that organization. We want you to get into the mentality that, as we all know, and as we said, it's a career rooted in service, but we also want you to get paid. Bylines are cool, paid bylines are even better. We also, we ingrain ourselves in the community in a way. Craft, for example, is one of the first courses that students take. And in craft, students are assigned a particular community district within New York City. So pre-COVID, students will be in charge of basically they will be the beat reporter for this particular CD. That could be as large as a 20-block radius. So they're there, God forbid there's a fire, they're right along there, New York One, the Daily News. But the majority of the time they're there when, at least on the surface, the stories are not there. So that's when they have to put, foot to the ground. They have to go out there, use a lot of the skills that we use in both, Social J and traditional MA, but most importantly, listening to the community that you're covering. And that's one of the most important skills that we cover across all masters that we have in the program. Let's talk a little bit about the application process, and then we'll have some room for additional questions. So application for us, we're a public institution. We're the only public master's institution in journalism in the Northeast. We do not require a GRE. We do require an application statement, a resume, transcripts, 3 letters of recommendation, 3 writing samples. One of those writing samples could be a multimedia piece. We do have an entrance exam that is a 4-part exam that deals with news analysis, news drill, grammar, and news ID. And then we also require, if applicable, the TOEFL scores if you did your undergraduate outside of the United States or in a non-English speaking institution. And we also ask for course by course evaluation if that's applicable. But all in all, it really brings your experience is something that is very important when you're applying. Don't feel that you're not capable of doing this. I would say 1/3 of our students do come with some experience, but then there's the others who are career changers, who definitely want to just explore something new. And then we have students that come straight from undergrad. You know, we have students, our age range is from 20 to 67. So you can't tell me that you're too young or you're too old for this program, because our age group varies. And this is really, all in all, really what our traditional master's program is about. We can go into a little bit more detail, as in Jeanette and or myself will put our contact information in the chat room. But we thank you. We thank everybody for coming and to really sharing this experience, and want to open it up to see if there's any other questions or anything else that anybody else in the room would like to share.
Thank you very much, Maximo. Very helpful. You know, I'm a little bit biased because I went to a CUNY school as well. I studied at City College up north of New York in Harlem, and I'm wondering, our veterans do have options, right? Lots of journalism schools in the city. Well, we won't name your competitors, but they do have places that they could look. So why should they choose your school over the others?
I could talk briefly, and then maybe Jeff and Carrie can talk about. I think that Social J is one of those programs that I think is unique across the country, and I think this is really the way we have to be rethinking journalism, but we're biased a little bit. For me, and again, I'm not, we do information sessions with our competitors in New York. I think we are not in that in the game of backstabbing and talking about other programs, because grad school is about fit. You know, no matter what an amazing speech I tell you today, I can't change New York City into USC in California. You're going to have a different experience, you know, in any of the programs. And if you are exploring programs, strong programs in communications, I encourage you to look at our competitors, Columbia, Medill, USC. You know, these are great programs that will give you different opportunities. But where we stand, I think one of the key things that I personally feel differentiates us, it's our size. And I think, you know, when you visit our campus, when you'll have the opportunity to visit our campus in the near future, you'll see that we're smack in the middle of Times Square. We're in one of the busiest centers of the world, if you will. But when you get upstairs to the 3rd floor, we all know each other by name. We identify the students. We greet you in open house by your first name. And that's because we're small in nature. The largest class I think we've ever had has been 120. And when you compare that to other programs, we remain small. That also has allowed us to be quick and nimble when it comes to changes, when it comes to adapting to the ever-changing world of journalism, and to really, you know, for example, let's take this COVID crisis, as you will. Our incredible faculty and staff were just real quick at pivoting and adjusting to a remote environment, and that's something that it happened within days during when the crisis first happened. So as you can imagine how we are preparing for anything else that happens. And meanwhile, I see my colleagues in other schools, they're still contemplating, and they're still trying to figure out, they're still nervous. Meanwhile, while we still don't know, and there's a lot of unknowns in our situation, we are doers, you know. So there's plan B, there's plan A of course, but then there's plan B and C already in place. And that's something that I feel has always been something that is unique about our program, and it translates across the board from the curriculum to the staff to the incredible faculty that will be teaching.
If I could just add, we are the only publicly supported graduate school of journalism in the Northeast. We are of the city. We are diverse. More than half the students are people of color. More than half the students are women. Doesn't mean we don't have work to do on the faculty. Look at me. But you know, we struggle and try, and we are of the city and of the people, and I think that matters. I shouldn't speak ill of my competitors, and I won't, because I have good friends at both of them, uptown and downtown. But we also have an esprit. when we have our accepted students days and people go to a certain other school north of us, and then they come to us, they just say the difference is stark, that we are welcoming small, as Max says, intimate organization, and we're flexible and we care about people as individuals. And so I think that's a big difference. If you want to, but NYU, for example, has a program in magazine journalism very specific to that. Has a program in science journalism, as do we, but it's very specific. If you go into the science program there, you stay in the science program. One of the advantages for us is flexibility. A lot of students arrive and say, "Oh, I thought I was going to cover arts, but I found, surprise, I like business." Or they come in thinking in Social J they're going to serve one kind of community, they serve a very different kind of community. Or in terms of media, they come in thinking that they're going to be writers for the New Yorker, and they turn out loving podcasts. So flexibility for us is a critical piece of, I think, what we offer people.
I think one last thing that I just want to add, which is, a big distinction, if you will, is that as a public institution, our tuition, we are very competitive. We are at times one of the most affordable journalism programs in the country, excuse me about that, without forfeiting, obviously, the quality. But as a public institution, that's really a place where you can see the big differences, both out-of-state, international, and in-state students.
So obviously a lot of our veterans, the reason they go to journalism school, or one reason, is so they can get a job, right? They want to come out of journalism school and then get to work. What sort of programs or services does your program offer to ensure that once they get that degree, they're on the right foot to getting employed in a newsroom?
Sure. And we have a career services department headed by Michelle Higgins and Yolanda Rodriguez. That's main existence, if you will, is to help you identify that internship that will be the best fit for you, and eventually create those relationships that can flourish into the job after graduation. So we have fairs that will, I'm guessing, move into a virtual setting this fall. But I'm sure they will still take place, where companies come exclusively to campus to recruit our students. And they're very particular to whether it's the community media fairs. We have fairs for our Spanish language students. We have broader fairs that really focuses on more the larger names and media entities. So companies are aware of us. Company knows, these media outlets know the quality of work that has come from our halls. But there's also that one-on-one. There's also that one-on-one in working with a particular student that have different needs, and that's where Michelle and Yolanda really shine, because, everybody comes with different levels of experience, and getting a job is a job in and of itself. You have to put in time, dedication, work, but that you have the incredible support team that exists, not only in that aspect of it all, but even coaches throughout the school. I think that's something that really stands out. Outside of just having Jeff and Carrie available to you as advisors, there's writing coaches, there's technical coaches. If you feel that you can improve in certain areas of audio, you can go to chat and discuss, Pro Tools. That's the beauty about the school. So regardless of how much or how little there's opportunities for you to augment, and it's really based on the support system that the school provides for our students.
Just real quick, also look at where things are going in the industry. Look at it. Take a second to see where everything is moving, what kind of skills are being emphasized, and you'll notice instantly that it is the community engagement movement. It is the Social J movement. It is the relationship building movement where journalism is going. And newsrooms 5 years ago, 6 years ago, engagement was still sort of, it could mean 17 different things. Now every newsroom has to have an engagement editor. Now every newsroom has to re-examine how they build trust with their community. Every newsroom, and they're all scrambling to do it because they're at least 5 years, if not 5 decades, late to the game. and positioning yourself at the forefront of not only the people who are practicing it, but who are studying how to do it better and better and better, and trying to understand exactly what it means and where it's going. That's the position you want to be in. That is the historical direction you want to point in, and that's exactly where the industry will end up, inevitably by choice or by force of nature, because there is no other response to the reality of today other than to dig deep and embed yourself in the community that you are serving and rely on them for not just the financial support, what you see with membership and subscriptions, but for the general support and the legitimacy that you derive from your relationship and with that community and the trust that they have in you. That is what makes the engagement route and the social journalism route and the CUNY route so appealing, and so it gives it so much more longevity than simply, like we were saying before, where do I get my first job and of course the material conditions of someone's life dictate whether or not they have time to postulate about the future of the industry. But that part is on lock in many ways. And you just described all the different ways that they prepare you for that. But at a higher level there, or at a step back, that is where things are going. And it is undeniable that these are crucial skills and crucial outlook that you have to have in order to be ready to enter the job market of 5-10 years from now, regardless of any other aspect. But yeah.
Joe, thank you for that. We're a little bit over our mark, so if there aren't any questions, I'd like to start wrapping it up. I definitely want to thank everybody who was in assistance today. Jeff, thank you. Thank you for staying the little extra time. Carrie, Joe, again, great for your participation. Rich, congratulations on the baby. And again, once again, everybody welcome. We have our contact information there. Anybody has any questions, and Richard, Darius, and Jenna, thank you for your participation, and we look forward to hearing from you. And if you're off tomorrow, have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
And very quickly, I believe that veterans can still apply for the fall program. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes. So let me give a little bit on that. We will make so the fall. The official extension closed on Friday, but you can hit me up individually, and I'll put my email on the chat room if you have any questions. If you're interested in applying for the fall and starting in September, shoot me an email and we can discuss. I'll weigh in the pros and cons of this, of what we can explore. I agree with Jeff also that this is one of the iconic, more generation-breaking news cycle of our lifetime. So it would be important to have certain voices reporting it. But we also know that it could be there's preparation involved into applying. So again, that's the conversations that we can have, and I welcome them. So please, putting my email now, feel free to write to me directly, and we can set up an information and a conversation from there. And anybody you, Zach or Richard or anybody else knows that you would like to refer to me, by all means, feel free to do so.